Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Isabella's eyes met Kyle's as she broke the silence. Kyle, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about for a while. He leaned in closer, his voice calm. I'm all ears, dear. Tell me what's on your mind. Not right now, she quickly interrupted, her tone firm. Kyle nodded, understanding the weight of her hesitation. When you're ready, we'll talk. But there's something I want to discuss on Saturday. All right, but I won't be able to talk about it without some kind of warning, he replied, trying to grasp the meaning behind her words. You'll get that warning, but promise me you won't react too quickly. I want you to think about it for a whole week before we really talk it through, Isabella said softly. Can you do that? Kyle took a deep breath, composing himself. I'm ready. I want to sleep with another man, she stated, watching his reaction closely. Kyle's expression froze in disbelief. Before he could say anything, Isabella gently pressed a finger to his lips, signaling for him to remain silent. He exhaled deeply, holding back his immediate thoughts. We can talk tomorrow if you need, but remember, this isn't a final conversation. It's just a way for us to clear the air, she added before standing up and leaving him alone with his thoughts. My gut reaction is a firm no, Kyle said the next day, not hiding his frustration. I understand, Isabella replied calmly. But no decisions will be made until Saturday. Just hear me out. Kyle raised an eyebrow, silently urging her to explain. If I decide to do this, it'll only be once, nothing more. You've always been rational and fair, Kyle. We need to discuss this properly on Saturday. You have time to think it over. I'll explain why I believe it's fair, and you can tell me why it's not. Then we can let a neutral person decide whose argument is stronger, she explained carefully. Kyle's curiosity grew. Who's this neutral person? Emma. She's agreed to mediate and promises to remain objective, Isabella answered confidently. Kyle pondered for a moment and nodded. All right, but I may need to clarify a few things before Saturday, just for clarity. That's fine, but I won't reveal my entire argument until then, she concluded, ending the conversation. Isabella, what does logic even have to do with any of this? Kyle asked the next day, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. Do you remember when we lived before the move, and you were offered the job in this city? Isabella began, her voice measured. Yes, I remember, Kyle replied, unsure of where she was heading. I suggested we move because it would be a compromise for both of us, but you said it wasn't practical. We would both have to commute and need 2 cars, she reminded him. Exactly, Kyle nodded, still not seeing the connection. And then you let me choose where we would live, and I chose this city. I take the bus, you drive the car. It makes more sense. We save on 1 car and I get home earlier to make dinner. It benefits us both, she explained. Kyle leaned back, trying to grasp the point. Okay, but what does this have to do with your request for a free pass here? It's about your approach to everything, through logic. You were right back then, and I respect that. Now I'm trying to think like you. I want you to give me a logical reason why I shouldn't go through with this. In return, I'll give you my arguments, without emotions, just like you always do, Isabella said, her gaze steady. Kyle's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. I need to ask you a serious question. Go ahead, Isabella encouraged, bracing herself for his response. Do you already have someone in mind for this arrangement? Kyle asked, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Absolutely not, Isabella responded firmly, meeting his gaze. Do you swear you haven't been thinking about someone for a while? Are you really starting with a clean slate? He pressed, his doubts clear. I swear there's no one, Isabella replied without hesitation. Kyle remained unconvinced. No one at work? No one you frequently interact with? Isabella sighed. Yes, there are men at work who have made their interest clear, and I won't deny that some of them are attractive, but I haven't considered anyone specifically for this. Kyle muttered under his breath, still skeptical. It seems unlikely. Isabella sighed again, feeling the weight of his doubts. Listen, Kyle, she began. I've been thinking about being with someone else. she confessed, her voice steady. But I promise it won't be someone you know, especially not anyone from work. It will be a complete stranger, just once this Friday. What do you think about that? Kyle squinted at her. Are you deliberately trying to hurt me? No, Kyle, not at all. I love you. There's no one else in my heart or life besides you. Then why are you doing this? He asked, softening, though confusion still gripped him. I just want to experience something new, she admitted. It's not about comparing you to someone else. It's not about his height, looks, or what he's like in bed. It's just about satisfying my curiosity. Theoretically, it shouldn't hurt you. So you're saying it's just one man, one time? Yes, exactly. Now say it out loud. It's not about hurting me. She looked him in the eyes, her sincerity clear. I don't want to hurt you, Kyle. I swear I don't. It was Isabella's idea from the start, said Emma on Saturday, crossing her arms. Let her speak first. I'll give my honest opinion after hearing both sides, but for now I'll stay quiet unless you ask for my opinion. Deal? Everyone nodded in agreement, and Isabella took a breath before beginning. Kyle, the first thing you need to understand is that love and physical intimacy aren't the same thing. If we want to move forward, you need to let go of the idea that they're always connected. Then prove it to me, Kyle responded firmly. Isabella tilted her head, thinking. There are many forms of love. You love strawberries, you love me, your mother, your favorite movie, all different types of love, right? Kyle shrugged. But I still love them all. Exactly. And by the same logic, intimacy can take many forms. What we have is intimate, intertwined with love. It's the deepest connection. But there are other forms: attraction, curiosity, comfort, even revenge in some cases. So you're suggesting intimacy out of curiosity? Kyle asked. Yes, and it has nothing to do with love. Okay, I'm starting to understand. You know, Paul Newman once gave an interview about infidelity, Emma interjected, raising an eyebrow. He said something like, if you have steak at home, why go out for a hamburger? I'm sure he meant it as a compliment to Joanne Woodward, but that analogy falls apart when you think about it, Kyle. With your logical mind, you should see that. Kyle nodded slowly. Because eating steak every day can get a bit tiring, and sometimes people just want a hamburger. Are you saying you're tired of me? Kyle asked, pain flickering in his eyes. Of course not, Isabella reassured him. But after 40 years, it's natural for things to lose a bit of their edge. I don't want us to reach that point and get stuck there. So you'd rather add some variety now before things get dull? Kyle asked, his tone softening. Exactly. It's not about boredom with you, Kyle. It's the desire to live with the memory that I tried something new, just once. Kyle sighed. All right, I'm starting to understand. Love, sex, and intimacy, they don't always align. Isabella nodded. And one more thing. When we met, I was innocent. Now we're both around 60, and we've spent more than half of our lives together. You had relationships before me. I've only known you. Kyle raised an eyebrow. So, you want to level the playing field? I'd be lying if I said that's not part of it, she admitted. But come on, one man, one time. That hardly evens the score. It's a small ask, really. And you're sure this won't destroy what we have? With your consent, Kyle, it's not infidelity. It's exploration, not betrayal. He nodded thoughtfully. Anything else? Just this. I've never understood jealousy. It doesn't make sense to me. You've seen me use toys. I have, Kyle acknowledged. Well then, you didn't feel jealous of that, did you? Emma, who had been silent until then, quietly chuckled, a smile flickering on her lips. You have at least partially convinced me, he admitted. This is something that gives you pleasure. Perhaps it doesn't satisfy you in the way it satisfies me, but with someone else, it wouldn't be any different. Just mechanical, physical intimacy. Logically speaking, you have no reason to worry. It's just one man, one instance, without emotional attachment. No offense, no guilt. We move forward as if nothing happened. If you love me, you will allow this, and that's the end of it. There was a brief pause. Honestly, I think Isabella made a rational argument, Emma interjected. I'm curious to hear your opinion, Kyle. And for the record, I haven't made a final decision yet. she added. Kyle took a deep breath before responding. Let me start by addressing Isabella's words. If you love me, you will allow me to do this. That is manipulation. It's emotional blackmail. And why do you think that? She asked with curiosity. Well, think about it, he began. What if I said, if you love me, you'll completely reject this idea? How would you feel? Does that seem like a fair argument? She pondered his words. Or, he continued, what if I said, if you love me, you'll allow me to do something extreme, just once? Would that seem logical to you? I see your point, she acknowledged. I'll drop that argument. But let's go back to the issue of love and intimacy. I don't deny that they can be separate things. Of course, he replied. And if we step back and look at this without emotions, I can understand how the idea of you being with another man wouldn't hurt me. If, of course, I didn't find any flaws in your logic. She leaned back in her chair, seemingly satisfied. All right. Now I'd like to continue my part of the argument by saying there are things that don't concern me. All right, Kyle said, shifting focus. Were you bothered by my past relationships? Yes or no? That's absurd, she responded. I didn't know you back then. Answer the question, Isabella, yes or no? He insisted. She sighed, irritated. Fine. No, they didn't bother me. Then let's break it down. What's worse, the fact that I was with someone before we met, or that you're with someone now, after we've taken vows of fidelity? Isabella exhaled sharply. Obviously, the latter is worse, but that's a weak argument. We aren't bound by religious rules. Vows are just ceremonial words. And your past relationships only matter now because they provide a basis for you wanting to explore this? Kyle pressed. I understand what you're saying, he added. And I'll even agree that love and intimacy don't always go hand in hand. But what happened before we met doesn't matter in the context of our marriage. You brought it up, so I'm responding. Fair enough, Isabella conceded. Now let me ask you, do you regret being inexperienced when we met? Not at all, she quickly replied. So you're satisfied that I was the first to share that experience with you, and you weren't jealous of my past partners? Not in the slightest. And when we got married, it didn't bother you that there were men you hadn't been with? Not particularly. Then, I suppose we can close the topic of past partners. Isabella nodded, though somewhat reluctantly. Consider it settled, Emma remarked. Kyle continued. If we agree that sleeping with someone else after marriage is far more destructive than anything that happened before it, then what you're proposing isn't just an attempt to settle the score. That's not how I see it, she countered. All right, he said, changing direction. Let's talk about something else. How would you rate being with me compared to a mechanical substitute on a scale of 1 to 10? They gave you a perfect score. Let's call it 10 out of 10, but that's only part of the picture. Isn't it logical that a relationship with another man could be better for you? Maybe an 8 or even a full 10? It's quite possible, right? Have you ever thought about that? I never used to think about it, but now I've had enough time to consider everything. All right, imagine this. You're with someone else right now. Would you treat him like a disposable object, just performing mechanical actions while he's distracted by his phone or the TV? Of course not. Or would he just lie there, completely detached in thought while you're on top, not caring either? No, of course not. That's not at all what I want. I need him to be present, passionate, fully involved. I crave that excitement. Isabella exhaled heavily, shaking her head as if trying to dispel a lingering thought. Exactly. So, as we've discussed, comparing a man to a temporary replacement is a mistake. What you really want is a real person who'll give you everything he's got, with a body covered in sweat. Isabella remained silent. A temporary replacement can't even promise you satisfaction, but you're relying on this stranger to give you at least one high point. Let's forget the idea of a replacement for now. All right. Instead, let's focus on the idea of just once. Are you completely sure that once will be enough? Yes, I'm sure. So if I agree, what happens in a year when the desire resurfaces? Maybe this time I'll keep my promise, but what's to stop you from wanting just one more time? Maybe with someone else? A different person? Maybe someone of another race or someone with a unique appearance? No. You don't understand me. I'm only talking about one time. That's what we agreed on. But how can you be so sure? We took vows when we got married to forsake all others, and now you want me to make an exception for you? What guarantee do I have that you won't ask for another exception? She sighed. I'm telling you, it's just one time. Well, from my point of view, your arguments are starting to fall apart. Let's cut out all the excess and get straight to the point. Give me an example of when I did something that made you feel disrespected or uncomfortable. I'm not going to ask how you'd feel if I slept with another woman. I already know the answer. But I want you to honestly answer a few simple questions. Go ahead. Emma, feel free to intervene if you think she's not being truthful or if I'm going too far with my questions. Of course, I'll intervene. Would it hurt you if you found out I had been close with another woman? Yes. And would it hurt you if it was only limited to intimate touches, deep kisses, with my hands slipping under her clothes, undressing her? Yes. What if we were just dancing closely? If I touched her back with my hand, feeling her body, would that upset you? Yes, Isabella answered. So no bed. But it would still upset you if I arranged a romantic dinner for us? I'd hate it. All right. And what if I just met her for a drink at a bar? No touching, no intimacy, just a conversation, testing the waters to see if she could be someone I might sleep with. Maybe I'd compliment her looks, run my fingers through her hair, and whisper something sweet to her. Would that still upset you? Yes. Let's lower the temperature. How would you feel if you found out I was looking for an intimate partner online? I would be absolutely beside myself with rage, Isabella began, her tone filled with irritation. Imagine if I calmly arranged a meeting over the phone or asked someone to introduce me to another woman. I would be boiling with anger. Stop torturing me. I already see the whole picture, she said in a firm voice. Isabella exhaled softly, noticeably relieved. Usually, when we make love, it takes about 30 minutes, right? But with this other man, will it be more or less? Emma asked with curiosity. That's roughly what I was thinking. Emma slightly nodded. But you wouldn't want it to be rushed, would you? Isabella continued. Of course not. If it's supposed to be the only time, your special moment, you need to get the most out of it, Emma said, catching a glimpse of hope in Isabella's eyes. One time is enough for me, but honestly, I'm not sure 30 minutes will be enough to get it out of my head. It's not about comparison, but I think one time will be sufficient, Isabella said thoughtfully. Would 45 minutes give you the closure you're looking for? Emma asked, raising an eyebrow. It's not just about finishing the act, Isabella explained. I'm talking about fully satisfying this curiosity. 45 minutes sounds just about right. And just to be clear, it's a one-time thing, right? No desire for something wilder like involving two men? Emma teased with a light tone. No way, Isabella responded immediately. So it's a one-time event, but it's not about the quantity or anything like that. It's something else, isn't it? Emma suggested aloud. Isabella remained silent. Kyle suddenly intervened, saying, Isabella, though your arguments might seem a bit weak, I see the logic in them. Emma, what do you think about all of this? Kyle asked, glancing her way. Isabella sat up straight, sensing that Kyle was beginning to lean towards agreement. Can you promise me that after this little adventure of yours, you'll love me just as you did before? He asked gently. Of course, Isabella answered without hesitation. All right, but I think we'll need to come back to this later, Kyle decided, shifting his position in the chair. Okay, Isabella agreed, but quickly added, You said you didn't want to hurt me or make me feel uncomfortable, right? Yes, and I believe that if I can endure you being with someone else, it won't hurt me, Kyle replied, exchanging a glance with Emma. In that case, it doesn't seem right to put all the responsibility on Emma to make the decision, Kyle said firmly. I'll take that on myself. But that's not what we agreed on at the beginning, Isabella objected, looking alarmed. I know, but it's unfair to make Emma bear the burden of this decision. No matter how it turns out, she's likely to feel regret or guilt. Your plan won't move forward if I'm not in agreement, regardless of what Emma thinks, Kyle explained. All right, so what's your decision? Isabella asked, crossing her arms. My decision is simple. I respect your desire to be with someone else, but I'll set the terms, and Emma will judge whether they're fair, Kyle calmly proposed. Wow, Isabella whispered. Everything will be based on logic, as expected. And if Emma disagrees with something, she can intervene, Kyle continued. That's fair, Emma agreed. But if she finds the conditions reasonable, you must abide by them. And if you break even one of them, we're done. Divorce, Kyle warned, his tone turning serious. Isabella leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. I agree, though reluctantly. You can make the final decision. I'll take my 45 minutes, choose a man I don't know, and everything will be on my terms. Even if it's at work, in a car, in an alley, or in our own bed? Isabella cautiously inquired. Exactly, Kyle confirmed without hesitation. Thank you, Kyle, Isabella said with a soft smile. Since we're all in agreement, I know it won't hurt me. But those other things you mentioned, they would hurt me just as much. Obviously, there are certain boundaries we cannot cross. No touching, no caressing, and certainly no intimate initiatives. Kissing is off limits, no dancing, no romantic dinners or drinks together. And don't even think about looking him up online or involving your friends in some meaningless chase. No exceptions. We agreed on this, didn't we, Emma? Kyle glanced over, waiting for confirmation. He's right, Isabella. It's simple and clear. You're only allowed direct intercourse. We call it engaging in intimate relations. Undress, open yourself to him, and let him do it however you like. While this happens, you can enjoy it. Pull him closer, praise him for his size for the full 45 minutes. But just to ensure you stick to the rules, I'll be there to make sure he doesn't rush or exceed the time limit. 1 extra minute and it's unfair. Isn't that right, Emma? Sorry, Isabella, but those are the rules. It's fair and logical, just like you wanted. Isabella sank back in utter despair, while Emma stood up from her seat. If that's all, I'll leave. Good luck to both of you. Kyle escorted her to the door where she whispered, Thank God. Good job. He returned and sat next to Isabella, who looked completely drained. You've won, Kyle. How does it feel? She asked, her voice hollow. Not as great as I thought, he admitted. There's one thing bothering me, something you said earlier. That phrase, it's stuck in my head. I don't want to die knowing only one man. I can't shake it. Sure, you can promise now that you'll never do it, but I can't get rid of the feeling that it won't go away. And if you do find another man, I'll file for divorce. I won't, she whispered. Maybe. But that desire will stay with you. It will fester. And because of that, from this moment on, I'll always doubt. No matter how long we're together, Isabella, I'll never be able to fully trust you again. Not until death. And for that reason, we're getting divorced. No, Kyle, no. Yes, I've realized this is the end. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.